Welcome to the Whole Dish Podcast. I'm your host, Sydney Fujawa. Today, I'm joined by holistic health coach and host of the Body Literacy Podcast, Jen Mayo. Jen and I will be discussing the implications of artificial food dyes on the chronic disease epidemic in the United States and how this nutritional issue is impacting children in particular. Welcome to the podcast, Jen.
Thank you for having me, Sydney. I'm so excited to be here.
So today we're going to be diving in about dyes. What exactly are food dyes? What are artificial food dyes, I should say?
Well, so there's different ways that foods can be colored, and there's natural ways to do it and there's artificial ways to do it. So certain companies that focus on natural foods and organic foods tend to use the natural food dyes that are colored with things like carrot juice or beet juice or blueberry juice, where we have these naturally occurring pigments in foods that we can extract and use as color agents. But it's a lot cheaper to use artificial dyes, and many companies have been using these artificial dyes for many years in their food supply to color things in packaged foods and processed foods. Largely, if we think about cereals and cookies and things like that, a lot of these things contain food dyes and candy especially. So when companies choose to use the artificial food dyes instead of the natural ones, there are some consequences that go along with the potential for health issues that these artificial chemicals rather than natural agents bring to the food.
So what makes artificial food dyes harmful to our health?
That's a great question, Sydney. Artificial food dyes have the propensity to be associated with things like hyperactivity and behavioral issues with kids, neurocognitive issues. They can cause allergies. They're potentially even carcinogenic. So if we think about like red dye number 40 and yellow 6, these contain things called benzodines. And these aren't natural compounds that are compatible with our human biology, versus when we use natural food dyes, these are just polyphenols and various different components that already exist in food naturally that give them their beautiful colors. So we're looking at incorporating things into foods that are natural and compatible with our biology rather than being incompatible with our biology. In particular, gut health is a huge place where any of these things can create a dysbiotic relationship in the body. And when gut health is off, particularly brain health will also be off.
And why are these food dyes specifically more dangerous for kids than they are adults?
Well, kids have, developing brains that are more vulnerable to these chemical agents. But I think more specifically, the dyes are used in foods that are appealing and marketed to children more. So especially if we look at the cereal aisle and all of the different breakfast cereals that are colored, like all of these things have very colorful food dyes added to make them more visually or aesthetically appealing to kids in order to sell more of these engineered foods. They're just marketed more towards kids because aesthetically children are going to be more drawn to those things, and the food companies know this and they market them in such a way to be more appealing to children.
And that's interesting because I know Fruit Loops and Kellogg's, they're kind of getting pushed back now because of all the food dyes. And I know you know a little bit more about the whole food babe situation and what exactly those protests are rooting for.
Yeah, so to give your listeners a little background, Vani Hari is a food advocate and influencer. She's branded herself as the food babe, and she's done a remarkable job of bringing awareness around how much these engineered foods are really are are incorporating what I'll call unfoods or synthetic ingredients that are making our children sick and that are making the chronic disease epidemic into adulthood explode. She organized a protest in Battle Creek, Michigan, which is the location of Kellogg's world headquarters, got a lot of people to show up and had a very public protest where she presented, I believe, 400,000 signatures on a petition asking Kellogg's to change their ingredient list in the United States, because what she was bringing attention to is the fact that other countries, they have higher standards for the ingredients that are allowed into their foods, and they have a larger list of things that are not allowed in the foods, including these artificial food dyes. So she was really drawing attention to how Fruit Loops in the United States uses these artificial food dyes, but the alternate versions of these in European nations and Canada actually use the natural food dyes that are derived from carrot juice, beet juice, blueberry juice, etc. In the United States, we have the biggest chronic health epidemic of any industrialized nation in the world. And we have the lowest standards for our food. And we're moving into an era where it's really undeniable to not understand the connection between the quality of our food and the unquality, if you will, of our health. And rather than looking to these engineered products that companies like Kellogg's and many others are making, that are making us sick and are making our kids sick.
So supporting food manufacturers who prioritize natural ingredients is a step in the right direction, rather than rewarding food manufacturers who are only looking to maximize profits at the expense of our children's health. That is the correct direction.
I couldn't agree more.
Thank you for tuning in to the first episode of The Whole Dish. On the next episode, we will be discussing the hidden sugars in healthy foods.